Slideshow mode. There we go. Thanks. Again, thank you for joining. I am Rebecca or Becky Boger from Brooklyn College. And I'm going to talk about a topic that's very relevant, I think, in the United States and everywhere around the world. And I'm going to start with a disclaimer in that while I'm going to be talking about talking about these ideas of anti-racist pedagogy and decolonializing the curriculum, I don't profess to be an expert in this, but we are in a process at Brooklyn College, some of the faculty and students in taking this on. So what I'm going to talk about are the way that GIS maps can be used for addressing these anti-racist pedagogy and decolonializing the curriculum in terms of mapping inequalities, and maybe from revealing we can also overcome racism in America. So I don't think it's an understatement to say that probably the year 2020 will go in the history books, and many people will be studying the year 2020 for years to come. And it has been quite a year. We are all living in the pandemic. The reason that we're communicating virtually and having this conference virtually, and under all of this intense pressure and such change in our lives and stress and all of that, we're also dealing with coming to heads with a lot of inequities that are in that we're dealing with in the United States and abroad. So there's a lot going on, and in the lower picture here, I'm actually not in New York right now. I teach at Brooklyn College, and New York has been hit very hard. One of the first places to really, in COVID, it was a trying time, and it has been a trying time. And this is actually on Saturday, after the announcement of the presidential election and the outpouring of people. And it was one time that I missed being there. Right now I'm in Newfoundland, Canada with family here. And so it has been very contentious, you know, with COVID and also of the elections and looking at red and blue, what side are you on, and so on. And actually, in looking at this, I didn't, you know, I was thinking about this. I said, where did we even get these color associations with parties? And in looking up, I didn't realize it only became kind of standardized for red and blue for, you know, Democrats and Republicans in the 2000 election. Before that, different colors would be associated by different news organization, different publications, but now it's become pretty standardized as to red and blue coordinating with the colors. Brooklyn College has not been immune to this, of course, as again, all of us. We are an inner city school. We serve largely underrepresented groups. We have over 100 languages spoken by people either working or working there as faculty or staff, administrators, as well as the student body. There's been a fair amount of unrest this year, and not only this year, there's been unrest, and a lot of this has been driven by the students and faculty working with students. When the budgets were really cut and there were extensive layoffs, at least the people who were hit the hardest were the adjuncts and staff, and those are people largely of color, or BIPOC, as we now use Black, Indigenous, people of color, showing some of the differences even within our own college in terms of faculty being predominantly white, and adjuncts or full-time faculty being predominantly white, and adjuncts and staff being people largely of BIPOC. And in response to this, there's been a lot of different activities going on with college and at Brooklyn College, as well as within the City University of New York system. This anti-racist coalition has become much more active with faculty, staff, and students. A lot of this, again, is student-led. And trying to bring make more aware or dealing substantively with systemic racism that's going on at Brooklyn College. and working with administration or negotiating with administration as to how to bring about substantive change and not just words. And so they have a website, and they're even showing the inaction timeline, the various since this coalition was formed, and the different types of activities that they have wanted to move forward to bring about substantive change, and nothing's being done. And so they're wanting to make things be done. And we have a Center for Teaching and Learning, which is wonderful. Oh gosh, the people running that have just been wonderful. But they came in when we had to go online in March. They stepped in with providing materials and lessons and support for faculty and students to transition in a very, very stressful and troubling time. And they have continued to do that over the summer and into the fall. And with this increasing desire or demand even from faculty and students to how to come together and deal with issues, in particular racism, within our college and within our courses. They've had, and there's not through this center necessarily, but there's also been a lot of listening tours, listening to students, listening to faculty, staff, as to what do you think about what's going on? What are your perspectives? What would you like to see changed? And students are very speaking out, and they are tired of having faculty who don't look like them. And there's all sorts of other issues and staffing and all sorts that are being addressed. And it's a process, but hopefully that we are hopefully this is through these difficult times that there is going to be also maybe a transformation, and hopefully into something that's better. While there's also an anti-racist coalition, largely tied with Black Lives Matter and other, there's other people of color. There's also students and faculty have been moving forward with more of Indigenous studies. And so, and now actually Ken Gould, who's the Dean of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, whenever I have meetings, a lot of meetings in other, with the Center of Learning and Teaching, and other meetings that we take place, we often start now with this acknowledgement. And I'm thinking, as I think about transitioning or creating my courses for the spring, I'm also thinking of ways to include this, and thinking that as I start new units, I might start with this acknowledgement, and I will just read it. We must acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Lenape. We, the Brooklyn College community, acknowledge that academic institutions, indeed the nation state itself, was founded upon and continues to enact exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples. This acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to the beginning of the process of working to dismantle ongoing legacies of settler colonialism and to recognize the hundreds of Indigenous nations who continue to resist, live, and uphold their sacred relations across their lands. We also pay our respect to Indigenous elders, past, present, and future, and to those who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. So it's, trying to get into a different mindset, to recognize different perspectives. And this is, there's an Indigenous Studies at Brooklyn College. I'm actually part of this. And it's, again, very much in response to student demands. This September, we had a, what we call a HES scholar, a private donor several years ago, put money aside so that 1 week in a year there we could bring in a scholar of different expertise on different themes that are chosen. Last year, for the school year of 2019-2020, we had a land theme, and we were to have in March Winona LaDuke come, an Indigenous scholar. Then when the campus closed down, everything was put on hold, but we did have a virtual week of scholar in residence, and it was actually the most I think attended with people participating in the sessions, Zoom sessions, than we have had in person. So it was very inspiring for both students, faculty alike, and gave us inspiration to continue on with how do we incorporate this more into our courses. And so this idea, and maybe you have heard about decolonizing the curriculum. I wasn't familiar with it until this year. So it is an education process for me. To my understanding, this started out of South Africa around 2015, student-led, wanting change in how courses are taught, the power relations between students and faculty, giving different perspectives in what is taught, and creating a more inclusive environment at the university. So this is being, again, discussed and incorporated at Brooklyn College. And so much of what in dealing with decolonizing curriculum, anti-racist pedagogy, is to switch and include these different perspectives. So what is being taught, how it's being taught, what subject matter is being taught, and how it is being presented. And so that's getting me to think about what am I doing in my courses that I teach. And so in looking at considerations for this anti-racist pedagogy and decolonizing curriculum, looking at course content, how the course is structured, and how do I transform from here to there, because it's a learning process. And also, as we are as educators here at this conference, are you teaching GIS? Are you teaching with GIS? And these are two different strategies or two different perspectives, if you want, as to how you're using GIS in your courses. And maps are great, and that's, I think we all know that, and we'll go through. So getting the content and using maps, I think, are an incredible way of dealing with some very difficult topics, bringing in different perspectives and way of thinking. And just to use some of these, and what I'm going to hear in content and some of this, and at the end, I hope you will share with, if you've been thinking about this, or share what you have been or plan to do or are thinking about doing in your courses. I would love to hear, and I'm sure others. It's a learning process. And so just looking at this is from the 2016 election. Elections are on our minds, having just passed a very, a long process. Looking at these I'm gonna call it normal maps as we present in the red or blue states in terms of the electoral college. And you can even get into discussions. I'm actually not in the social sciences. I'm in the natural sciences, Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences. So I don't have the history or social science discipline and training. I don't have. I'm learning more. I'm also the director of urban sustainability, so I have been working with a lot of social scientists for a number of years, and that's been my education process, if you want. In terms of the electoral college, you could even break that down and look, why do we even have an electoral college? And that gets back into the legacy of slavery. But another way of looking at those electoral colleges is starting to look at the states, the sizes and of the population with these states, and those red or blue. And so the cartograms give you a different perspective. And taking that even farther, you could start to look into looking at county level data and putting in gradations of colors. And that reveals different information. And the one in the lower right, looking at that with the cartogram, and it's quite a different perspective than if you look at, or gives you different information if you look at here versus here, and it's a lot probably more complex picture of what's going on in the United States. And as within Indigenous perspectives, there's a wonderful website here, native/land.ca. looking at indigenous perspective, indigenous mapping and territories and language, something not maybe that commonly taught in courses, but why not? If you have an ability in your courses, in your subject matter, let's bring in these different perspectives into the course. One that I have brought into my courses, or at least some of them, is the Walikia project. And this is a mastermind behind Eric Sanderson and others, recreating what the island of, initially the island of Manhattan, now it's broadening out to the other boroughs of the New York City region. What did it look like before Europeans came here? And it's just, and then you can even go an interactive map and go onto a street, say in Manhattan, and it will show you what it looked like before 1609, when Henry Hudson and others came to North America. And it's I have found that actually very enlightening for students, because if we've transformed our world, we're in New York City, so quickly over the past couple of hundred years, well, can't we transform it to another way? Because often I deal with students and they say, well, they don't, you know, this is the way it is, this is the way it always has been. You know, a sense of powerlessness and you know, trying to question them. Let's look at things in a different perspective, you know, and look at the past. If it's happened then, you know, can we do something that might be make this world a better place? Again, proving and looking at these different perspectives, looking at how we govern our areas now versus maybe what was before. And changing a frame of reference. Let's, you know, challenge ourselves, challenge our students, and look at the world. Why is North always up on the top? And it's only been a few hundred years that this is consistently being at top. And it's again, I'm not, and someone in the audience might know better than me, is probably an artifact of colonial settler colonialism, in that the major powers, navigation powers, were Europeans, and they oriented the maps to the top, and that's what's become more or less standardized. But historically, if you look at different cultures, it hasn't always been that way, and may not always be this way now. So let's just look at things in a different way. My phone. And as mappers, we know, we teach about different map projections and distortions, and of area, direction, shape, or distance, and what different projections conserve versus distort more. Why is that? What do you want to? How do you want to use that? And Mercator isn't one that's often you know, talked about, because it is a common, and preserving the direction. And I actually watched not too long ago a video on saying that this was the Mercator projection is racist, and I don't know if I necessarily agree with that in the terms of why it was created. Direction was very important during the navigation, but then you could say, well, that was part of settler colonialism. Maybe there is a racist element in that, but I don't know if that was necessarily in the minds of those who created it. And there's been lots of discussions about the Robinson projection in terms of how conserving area more and actually showing how large Africa is as a continent, and not either minimizing the importance of that continent or minimizing the poverty and other issues that are ever present on that continent. And then the historical maps are wonderful. There's so many beautiful, they're works of art, but they also do present certain assumptions, power dynamics, and so on. So this map, you can also look at the ways of the portrayals of white people versus Native Americans, Africans, or other indigenous peoples. So great, teaching tool. And then bring it into modern day. I haven't been actually to the Museum of Natural History in New York City for a while. There was a discussion of removing this, and maybe it has been removed, but Teddy Roosevelt on top of that horse with you're Native American and you're a slave or a person of African descent, subservient to Teddy Roosevelt. And so being aware that this might be offensive to some people. And in map design, there's so much that we can teach in how we, create a map, what data sets are shown, what is not shown, what colors and symbols. And there are certain, depending on what you're presenting, what information, there are some things that are pretty well standardized, but maybe let's experiment more to see how we're going to present information. What are them, and to have students really think critically about the map, tear it apart, ones that they see, ones that they create. What are the messages? Who is the target audience? What can you say about the person who created that map? What are assumptions? And probably all of you know it, but that wonderful book, little book by Mark, this last name is evading me, but anyway, How to Lie with Maps. And there's other articles is written, wonderful, how maps are used historically and now, maybe unconsciously, with messages that maybe not so great. Thank you. And there's also lots of different materials out there if you want to have students learn about racism, the historical processes, actions that have been used, why our cities and other places are still very racially segregated as to where we live. And there's a legacy of bank financing, real estate, government initiatives that have helped to create the situation that we're still living in. And this, if you haven't seen this is fantastic. This is University of Virginia. This map, every dot representing people of different racial or of these groupings at least here, white, black, Asian, Hispanic. And this is looking at the New York City area, Brooklyn here to the lower left here, going into Queens, going into Long Island. As you go east, Manhattan over here, and you start to see, very distinct color patches with areas where they are largely black, largely white. There's some mixing. It's not obviously exclusive, but there's definitely areas where people are majority one color or another, and brings into questions of why is that? Is that just something that's inherently in us, or is this something that we're living through that we need to learn more about and address in fundamental ways? COVID, and of course, COVID. There's so many materials, and as we've been so wonderful in creating or helping to create these different data hubs and ways that you can get data yourself to analyze, or lesson plans and the gallery here. And COVID, if one thing it's really has shown, racial disparities and who is being the most impacted, and that being people of color and and the elderly as well, but people that who's borne the brunt of this disease has been people of color, and not to diminish everyone who's been harmed by this, but more deaths have occurred with people of color. And so that leads into questions, why is that? And so that's just it. So there's lots of material out there and lots of ways to get you started if you are thinking of doing something like this. But also in terms of looking at decolonized curriculum, and where I'm thinking is how to restructure my class more to empower students, to make them feel more comfortable, to look at different perspectives and thinking about, well, how do I make this happen? And so I have been going to some of these different workshops and doing a bit more reading, workshops at the Center of Teaching and Learning, talking to my colleagues and working through this as to what I might be doing initially in the spring when I offer my courses. I'm fortunately not in one way teaching this fall, so I can spend a little bit more time looking into this and how I want to present my classes or structure my courses. And so there is a fair amount of material out there. I've just been looking at, this is from a site in Canada here, looking at ways to decolonize my curriculum. This particular site has more focus on Indigenous perspectives, but it's applicable to, I think, any context that you're dealing with in terms of the body of your students. And this is really, I actually loved this. And there was, I was reading through one faculty's journey and how she was undergoing a decolonizing of her curriculum. And this is from, what does that mean, again, decolonizing the curriculum? I'm not sure that I fully understand it at this point, other than really trying to make an inclusive and accepting classroom or course in which different perspectives are brought and respected. And we get into open discussions about this, as well as being more receptive to student input in what they want to be taught, and learning from them. That I am not the pillar of knowledge necessarily, may have more expertise in some things, but that they are coming with a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge that they are bringing into the classroom, and to respect that and to incorporate that better than what I have been. So this is from one document here in looking at what it means to decolonize the curriculum, and there's others too, but just trying to really reflect on this and you know, how what that means to me, how that translates into what I'm doing in my courses. And also been learning about, and I don't, when we talk about white supremacy culture, and there's also this term whiteness, and the word white is used, and I'm white, I'm a white woman. But it's more about the culture and the expression of those who are in power. And white, if you want culture, or white people as of colonial legacy have been in power. And so this white supremacy being in, and it doesn't mean that it's only exclusive to white, this idea of whiteness, it's the manner in which you, the power dynamics and manner in which you express yourself. And so there is this one document here, Workbook for Social Change, looking at what is white supremacist culture, and actually looking at this, and it's really, I'm learning a lot and thinking about assumptions and how I present myself to my students. And what I'm ultimately trying to, or want to do, is again, break out and look at these different perspectives and ask different questions and have people in influencing asking different questions. Why is it that sciences and natural sciences are still largely dominated by white men? And even though we keep trying to break it and we have these instances of breaking it, it's still there. Why is Brooklyn College? Why are the faculty still mainly white? What are those questions? Who are choosing what's to be funded? What are you choosing to be good questions? And it might be a controversial subject to get into, but I think we need to be challenging this. And I just love this little, I actually borrowed this from a friend of mine who gave a talk, and you can read it yourself, but I'll read it. Students or children are asking the instructor, do turtles have periods? No. Do snakes have periods? No. Reptiles don't have periods. Oh, do bats have periods? We know of 4 bat species that have periods. Does it fly when it has a period? I don't know. Does it hang upside down when it has a period? I don't know. Why don't you know? The researchers who study these species haven't answered these questions. Oh, are they boys? So if we get more people, from these different perspectives and backgrounds, we're going to have different questions. And I find that very exciting. And this, just as an ending slide here, why haven't more been done to diagnose the conditions in Black and brown skin? Why? Why hasn't this been considered something that needs to be done? Maybe there's a simple reason. Maybe it's just we need to break down those boundaries between us, and again, bringing those different perspectives in. And so that's it. That's just sharing some of what we're doing at Brooklyn College, sharing my own thoughts, my own journey. And again, I'm very much in the beginning of my journey, and I would love to hear from you if you are going through a similar process or thinking about it. The floor is open. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky. I just want to encourage everyone to, if you're willing and interested, to turn on your camera so we can all see each other. And anybody that would like to ask a question, just click on the little icon for raising your hand and I will acknowledge you, and you can unmute yourself and ask a question. It's good to see everyone. Oh, I should turn my own on.
Yeah. Okay, so we go into the chat here.
Yes, other options are to look at the chat or the Q&A on the website. It looks like Marcos has his hand raised, so go ahead and unmute yourself, Marcos.
Thank you, Becky. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's a hard topic to talk about. It can be very uncomfortable, particularly if you're new to it or we're all working our way through these things. I'm curious how you personally incorporated this into your own teaching, particularly because you said you work in the natural sciences predominantly, and I'm curious how that plays out there, because I know it is hard to come into something where there is a lot of domain knowledge that's not familiar to you, and I know that you want to do right by it. So I'm just curious what you've done specifically.
Right. Thank you. And I haven't actually I haven't revised my courses to incorporate what I've been talking about. That's my process now. But it's been participating, for the most part, participating in discussions that Brooklyn College faculty and students are having, and learning from them and sharing out and getting ideas. So for me, that's been my main way of building a community of support, building a community of learning and sharing, has been through these discussions going on Brooklyn College. And and just reaching out and the website and learning as much as I can.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have, oh, there we go, Shannon, go ahead.
Hi, so I'm wondering, you said that much of this work came about because of students voicing their concerns. So like, what was the process that that the students accessed to be heard, and how did the college respond? Like, what structures were put in place to create a platform for these students so that faculty could really dig into this work?
Yeah, that's a good question. Brooklyn College has a progressive, I guess I say a progressive arm to it historically, with faculty faculty that are active with different organizations and active with students. And there's a fair number of students who are active in various initiatives. So faculty working with students together, creating various platforms through the website, meetings, and it's been a challenge obviously with COVID and meeting virtually. There's also probably at this time, there's been a bringing together of faculty and students because of such
harsh budget restrictions to CUNY that, and we have a strong union at CUNY, and so there's been a lot of synergy to fight back against, and then in the context of what's going on in the world, well, particularly in the United States, having discussions and trying to bring demands to change within the administration. So there have been, so it's not something that changed overnight. There were groups working on this, but they seem to, with what's going on, they've become much more active and vocal about what's going on and trying to be making change into the college.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have a question or comment for Becky? See if I can check over on the app just to see if anyone posted a question over there.
There is one. Have you found any collaborative discussion or chat groups that educators can join to gain support for decolonizing our curriculum? That's a good question. Again, for me, it's been mainly within the Brooklyn College. I would love to know if others are in other discussions. It would be great to broaden out and find out what other institutions are doing. Right now, I've been focused on Brooklyn College, and that's been my main way of learning and participating. But so if anyone else knows of different groups to join, that please share.
David, go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. And thanks, Rebecca. That was great. We're exploring similar issues at UConn and trying to do something. But what that looks like, we're not quite sure about. But one thing that I've noticed is that there's, I don't necessarily want to call it pushback, but resistance to the idea of structural racism. And there's a group of us that are sort of looking at this, but sort of how to explain that to folks who don't get what structural racism is. And I'm just wondering if you've had any sort of experiences with that at Brooklyn College, and just sort of that resistance to, people thinking, oh, well, I don't see color. I treat everybody equally, and not understanding sort of the structural nature of it, of the problem, and that it exists in sort of every part of our society. We're in the middle of doing like a strategic plan for our college, and so we have different, themes, and there's like an agriculture, because we're in the College of Ag, there's sort of a agricultural group and, other conservation group and things like that. And in different groups, it's like, oh, well, racism's not really an issue in our group. And so it's just sort of getting over those hurdles. I'm just wondering if you have any advice based on the experience at Brooklyn College.
I'm not sure. I haven't had to deal with it directly yet. But I anticipate that I am. Where a lot of this activity is going on is within the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. And I am housed, so I work through the humanities and social sciences for the program I direct in urban sustainability. My department and where am I housed is with earth and environmental sciences. So and there have been actually discussions going on about systemic racism in the sciences and how to overcome that. And there's a wonderful faculty, he's the chair of the biology department in talking about systemic racism in the sciences. So we're broaching that, but I'm going, and I am going to sense, because at some point I'm going to want to address it more directly within my department, and I am going to sense a pushback in the sense of why do we have to deal with this in the sciences, or where systemic racism isn't in the science in our department. And I don't have experience yet, but I'm anticipating that that's going to happen, and I am working with other people at the college who do have more experience. So unfortunately I can't answer yet, but let's keep in touch. You know.
Great. Time for one more question, maybe. Maybe if
Great. Well, I'm around, ask questions. I would love to hear again more about what people are doing or your thoughts on things. We're all in this together, and we're all learning together. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just want to remind everyone that the poster session starting in a few minutes, and the way that will work is that we have a bunch of meetups created over in the community section of the virtual site, and each one can hold up to 30 people, so we should be good. And you basically, including the poster presenters, you just go there and you click to join. It's just like a Zoom meeting, except you don't need a link or anything. You just join right from that listing, open it up. So I hope everybody enjoys that. I hope it works for everyone. If you're using one for the first time, it may ask you to download something if you're using one of the Whova based ones, and it'll say something about allowing Jitsi, I think. So just say yes to that. You should be good. All right. Thank you very much, Becky. And thank you everyone for participating today, and we'll see you over the next few hours. Thanks.